Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah?
Today we're looking into,
Oh, this is a hot one.
yeah, it's a big one.
It is.
It's this whole thing with President Trump's executive order to get federal workers back in the office
5 days a week,
5 days a week.
back in the saddle.
So this has a lot of people talking. Obviously, impacts
Okay.
federal workers, but it also has implications for DC itself.
The whole economy.
Yeah, so we're going to try to unpack all of this, and for this deep dive, we've got a couple of sources.
Lay on me.
We've got a news report from FOX5 Washington, D.C., which gives us kind of that local perspective. And we also have a really interesting forum post from the website BX, which is a little more
Cryptic.
shall we say?
Yeah.
A little more.
Under the radar.
Yeah.
A little spicy.
It is a little spicy. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But the thing that's really fascinating to me here is all the different opinions this has stirred up.
Oh, yeah. It's like a microcosm of the whole, future of work debate.
Yeah. Is this a sign of things to come? Are we going back to the way things were? I don't know.
Right. Who knows?
But let's start with the basics. What does this executive order actually say?
So the nuts and bolts are that President Trump signed this order requiring federal workers to come back to the office.
The whole 5 days?
Yeah, the whole shebang, 1 day through Friday, 9 to 5 or whatever their hours are.
Be there.
Be there.
And they're saying that this is to boost efficiency and revitalize the federal workforce?
Get everyone back in the swing of things.
Right.
They're saying it's going to be rolled out gradually over 30 days, so agencies have time to adapt.
That's kind of generous.
Well, can you imagine just like flipping a switch and everybody's back in the office?
Chaos.
Yeah.
So this is happening against the backdrop of this huge shift to remote work that we've all seen, especially since the pandemic.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's been a wild few years, right?
Can you remind us a little bit about how we even got to this point?
Sure. So, the big move to remote work really happened under Trump's first term. Because of COVID, everybody had to stay home.
Right.
And then even when the federal health emergency ended in May 2023, a lot of people just stayed remote.
Like they were already set up.
Yeah. Why go back if you don't have to?
Right.
And
yeah.
that FOX5 report you mentioned, they were talking about a Senate report that found only 6%
6%.
of federal workers are actually back in the office full time.
That's so tiny.
It's crazy, right? And almost a third are still fully remote.
That's wild.
It is. So this order is a pretty major shakeup.
Yeah. Huge implications.
Huge.
So, all right, we've got this backdrop, but what do people actually think about this order? Is everyone happy to be going back?
Well, FOX5 talked to a bunch of taxpayers, and some people were all for it,
Like, it's about time.
Yeah. They should have been back ages ago, pandemic's over, get back to work kind of vibe.
But then others were like, I don't know about this.
Right. They thought it was more of a political play.
Which I guess you could see how people would think that.
It's hard to say, what's really driving it.
It's interesting because this difference in opinions kind of reflects this bigger conversation about the future of work in general, right?
Oh, totally. It's like this perfect example of, flexibility versus traditional productivity versus, being in the office, presenteeism versus, being measured by your output.
It's really interesting. And then on top of that, you've got the whole DC angle, Mayor Bowser. She's been pretty outspoken about how the city has suffered economically because of federal workers not being around.
Makes sense. I mean, think about it. If you're not going into the office every day, you're not grabbing lunch.
You're not grabbing coffee.
You're not going to happy hour.
Exactly.
You're not shopping.
So fewer workers means less money for all those businesses downtown.
Yeah, restaurants, shops, services, the whole ecosystem takes a hit.
So getting those workers back could potentially be a good thing for DC's economy.
Yeah, it's a boost for sure.
But are there any potential downsides or challenges we should be thinking about? Because it can't all be positive, right?
Right. Well, for one thing, not everybody thinks this one-size-fits-all approach is the way to go.
Yeah. I mean, every job is different.
Exactly. And Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland, he's voiced concerns about that. He thinks they need a more nuanced approach.
I mean, think about it. You've got people who maybe moved further away during the pandemic because they knew they could work remotely.
Yeah, now they've got a monster commute.
Exactly.
Or maybe they found childcare that works with their remote schedule.
And now they're scrambling.
Right.
And then there's the whole legal side of things. FOX5 mentioned that some labor attorneys are anticipating lawsuits to try and block this.
Oh, yeah, this is going to get messy.
So it sounds like it could get quite complicated.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, remember, some federal workers already had agreements in place allowing for remote work even before Trump's first term.
You mean like
union contracts and things like that.
Oh, so those agreements could make things even trickier legally.
Oh, yeah. You can have a whole bunch of different situations depending on what people's contracts say.
So we've got this executive order, we've got concerns about DC, we've got potential legal challenges, and then we've got this mysterious BX forum post.
This is the juicy one.
The one titled, January 28th, Return to Work or Accept Buyout. Trump offers federal workers ultimatum.
Ooh, an ultimatum.
So what's the deal with this? Should we be taking this seriously, or is this just like internet
Well,
rumor?
it's definitely interesting to think about.
It is.
It suggests that maybe federal workers are being given a choice, come back to the office or take a buyout package and leave.
Like a take this or leave it kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But we don't really know any of the details, do we?
Right. It's super vague.
Hmm.
The post doesn't say how widespread this offer is, what the buyout would even look like, or if it's even real.
Or if it's just some guy on the internet making stuff up.
Right, exactly.
But even as a rumor, it's kind of telling, right? I mean, it suggests that some people are so against going back to the office full time that they would rather quit their jobs.
It definitely shows how strongly some people feel about this.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. What kind of impact could that have on the federal workforce if a bunch of experienced people just up and leave?
That's a good question. I mean, you could have a real loss of expertise and institutional knowledge.
Yeah, that could make things pretty difficult for the government.
Yeah, and it would be a huge hiring challenge to try and replace all those people.
So this buyout thing, even if it's just a rumor, it kind of highlights the potential consequences of this push to get everyone back in the office.
Oh, definitely. It adds another layer of complexity to the whole situation.
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
And we're going to keep unpacking all of this right after we hear from our sponsors.
Stay tuned.
We'll be right back.
Yeah, it really makes you think about, the nature of work, what even is an office anymore.
Right.
All these big questions.
And it's not just the government watching this unfold. I bet there are a lot of private companies looking at this situation with federal workers and thinking, is this a sign?
Yeah, are we going back?
Are we going back to the old ways?
Is the pendulum swinging back?
Yeah. And if the federal government, with all of their employees, can actually get everyone back in the office, are other companies going to say, well, we can do it too?
Right, if they can do it, maybe we can too.
It could set a precedent.
Yeah, exactly.
But companies also have to think about things like attracting talent and keeping their employees happy, especially these days when it's so competitive.
Oh, yeah. Nobody wants to lose good people.
So how do you think this whole push and pull between employers who want people back in the office and employees who want more flexibility, how's that going to play out?
It's a tough one. It's really going to depend on the industry, the company culture, the type of work people are doing.
Yeah, some jobs just work better in person.
Right. Like if you're in a lab or something, you can't exactly do that from home.
True.
But other jobs, maybe you're a writer or a programmer, you could be anywhere.
Yeah, so it's not one size fits all.
It's about finding the right balance.
Yeah.
What works best for the company and what keeps the employees happy and productive.
It feels like we're in the middle of a big shift in how we think about work, and this executive order is like right in the middle of it.
It's a turning point for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it could either signal that we're going back to the pre-pandemic ways, or it could be like a launch pad for even more flexibility and remote work in the future.
It could go either way.
Yeah. It's hard to say what's going to happen.
But one thing's for sure, this is a big moment for workers in America.
Yeah. The decisions that get made now are going to affect how we work live.
Everything.
For years to come.
Absolutely.
Let's go back to DC for a second. We've talked about how getting federal workers back in the office could help the city's economy, but realistically, how do you think that's going to play out? Will it be smooth sailing, or are there going to be some bumps in the road?
Well, Mayor Bowser, she's definitely been pushing for this. She's really worried about the impact on DC's economy.
Yeah, she wants those workers back.
But there are definitely challenges to think about.
Like what?
Well, think about traffic.
Hmm.
More people commuting means more cars on the road. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then public transportation could get overwhelmed.
Pack buses and trains.
Yeah. And then parking. Forget about it.
Even harder to find a spot.
And more expensive, too.
Yeah, so those are all real problems.
And then what about the workers themselves? A lot of them have gotten used to working remotely.
They've settled into a routine.
Right. They've got their home office set up. They've figured out childcare.
And now suddenly they have to go back to the office 5 days a week.
Yeah. They might not be too happy about that.
There could be a lot of pushback.
Oh, yeah. And what about people who moved further away because they knew they could work remotely?
Now they've got a really long commute.
Exactly.
So it's not as simple as just telling everyone to come back and expecting everything to be fine.
Right. It's going to take some careful planning and good communication.
And they're going to have to be flexible and really listen to the needs of the workers in the city.
Yeah, it's a balancing act for sure.
Okay, so we've got the economic side of things, but this has also become a bit of a political football, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, some people see this executive order as a way for President Trump to appeal to a certain type of voter.
Right. The people who think everyone should be back in the office like the good old days.
Yeah, the people who maybe think remote work is for slackers.
Right. Or that you're not really working unless you're in the office.
And you can see that sentiment in the FOX5 report. Some of the people they interviewed were really adamant about federal workers being present in their offices doing their jobs in person.
Yeah, get back to work kind of thing.
Exactly.
And, for President Trump, this executive order is a way to project a certain image. Strong, decisive, no nonsense.
Back to basics.
Right. And that message might resonate with voters who value that kind of traditional work ethic.
Yeah, they might see remote work as lazy or entitled.
But on the flip side, he also risks alienating the people who really value flexibility and see remote work as a way to improve their work-life balance.
And be more productive.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's a tightrope walk for him, trying to appeal to both sides of this issue.
Yeah, because this whole remote work versus in-office thing, it's becoming a pretty divisive issue.
It really is.
So how do you see this playing out politically?
It's hard to say. I mean, it really depends on how this whole thing goes down.
Right.
Does the executive order actually boost efficiency? Does DC's economy bounce back? Or does it all fall apart?
Do we have a mass exodus of workers?
Right, exactly. All of that is going to affect how people view this and how it affects President Trump's political future.
It's fascinating, right?
It is.
This one executive order has set off all these chain reactions, economic, political, social.
It's a microcosm of everything that's happening in society right now.
And we're only just scratching the surface.
Yeah, this story is far from over.
Stay tuned, folks. Okay, so before we wrap up, we really need to circle back to that whole BX forum post thing.
The buyout rumors.
Yeah, the buyout rumors. Do you think there's any truth to that, or is it just a bunch of internet noise?
I mean, it's tough to say, without more concrete info.
Yeah.
The post itself is super vague, and nobody from the White House or any of the government agencies has said anything officially about buyouts.
Right. It's all very hush-hush.
Yeah, but even if it's just a rumor, it kind of shows you how some federal workers are feeling about all of this.
Yeah, like they're so against going back to the office that they'd rather just quit.
Exactly. And if that's the case, I mean, imagine what that would mean for the government trying to implement this executive order.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy if everyone's resisting.
It'll be a tough sell for sure.
Okay, so let's play devil's advocate here.
Right.
What if this buyout thing is real? What could that mean for the government and for taxpayers?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is all the experience that could walk out the door.
Yeah.
If you have a bunch of people who've been doing their jobs for years and years suddenly leaving.
They know all the ins and outs.
Exactly. And that expertise is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that could really affect how well the government runs.
And it's not like you can just snap your fingers and replace those people.
Right. It takes time to
Mhm.
hire and train new people.
So you could have this weird situation where the executive order is supposed to make things more efficient,
Right.
but then they offer buyouts and a bunch of people leave and it ends up making things less efficient.
It could backfire.
Yeah, it seems a little counterproductive.
It just goes to show you that you can't always predict what's going to happen when you make big policy changes.
There are always unintended consequences.
Like a domino effect.
You bump one thing and a whole bunch of other things start to move.
Exactly. And that's what we're seeing here with this executive order.
Right. I mean, we've got the economic side of things with DC and the businesses.
Right.
And the legal challenges that could happen.
And the political maneuvering.
And the potential impact on the workforce.
It's all connected.
Yeah, it's a big tangled web.
It really is.
So for our listener who's been with us on this whole deep dive into President Trump's return to office order, what's the big takeaway here?
I think the main thing to keep in mind is that this isn't just about where people are working. It's a much bigger conversation about the future of work and how employers and employees are going to relate to each other.
And how the government is going to be involved in all of that.
Exactly. And this is something that affects all of us.
It's not just some abstract concept.
It impacts our lives, our jobs, our well-being.
Yeah, and the decisions that are being made now are going to have a ripple effect for years to come.
So we need to stay informed and get involved in these conversations.
And speak up for what we believe in.
Exactly. Whether that's more flexibility or more structure or whatever it is that matters to you.
Because we all have a stake in this.
We do.
This has been a really insightful Deep dive. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we've explored a lot of different
And
angles.
this is a story that's still unfolding, so we'll have to keep an eye on it.
Definitely. Who knows what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
Maybe those buyouts will actually become a thing, or maybe they'll just disappear.
It's all a mystery.
But one thing's for sure, the world of work is changing, and we all need to be ready to adapt.
Yeah. Stay informed, stay engaged, and be ready for whatever comes next.
That's the key.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Until next time.
See you later.